have loved Kevin since I can remember when I would see his name that he was going to be on Carson or Letterman or Leno, whatever. I never missed his performances. I was married to an impressionist for 20 years. But and I actually knew the kid that you'll tell us the story of how you got your walk-in, but I know Jay from 25 years ago at the Comedy Cellar in New York. Not the comedy, no, it was the one on anyway. But yeah, when he was just like 18 and doing it, and so I've been around I really appreciate impressionists, and there is, I mean, next to Paul, I was just going to say next to Paul Lynde. This is not good.
Wow.
Because I'm having a brain fart completely.
Do you mean Rich Little?
I mean Rich Little. I just was saying Paul. I don't know where that. Wow. But does he do Paul Lynde? Does he do Paul Lynde? I doubt you don't do Paul Lynde. But there is no one there is nobody who is finer at this art. And he even has a show called Talkin' Walkin', where he is Christopher Walken for the entire hour. And I actually subscribed to it because he said he would follow people on Twitter if they subscribed to Talkin' Walkin'. So I did, and he did. So maybe he'll carry it over for the girls. But anyway, it's adorable. I listened to it. It's very, very cute. Okay, so all right, let's get to things that matter here. All right, okay. He, in addition to Christopher Walken, I'm sure you've all heard him do Christopher Walken, who on the planet has not. He also does, his Alan Arkin is epic. And I was just listening to one of his chat shows where he was telling the story where he called Alan as Alan and left a message on his own machine telling himself something he forgot. You know? And I think Alan said it took like 9 minutes for him to realize that it wasn't. He does Johnny Carson, Gabriel Byrne, Robert De Niro, Peter Falk, Dudley Moore, Nicholson, Reiser, Schwarzenegger, Shatner. I mean, all of them are unparalleled. He does 2 Shatners. He has 2 versions. Yay. Maybe he'll give us them both. And and we've been trying to get Albert in the living room, and today we are going to have Albert in the living room because his Albert Brooks is iconic. But he's equally adept at dramatic roles and comedic roles as an actor. Kevin has appeared, it says here 70 films, but I think it's even more, as well as countless television projects, and has established himself as one of the few stand-up comedians to have a successful dramatic film career. And I read last night in his book, there's a great, what do we do in the break, ladies?
Buy books.
And CDs. And CDs, Sexy Michael. We're going to do a Q&A, by the way, before we break. A quick Q&A. I don't want to do it too long because I want to give you time to buy books and take pictures and buy books and CDs. But anyway, I was reading in his book last night this great chapter about his meeting Tom Cruise for the first time.
Don't tell him that story.
He's going to read it. I'm not going to tell you another word, but it's fantastic. Okay, good. He's going to read that one. I'm so excited because I love that story. Okay, so in addition to his acting talents, he's also proven himself as both a writer, producer, recently a director, and a talk show host.
Brilliant!
Have you seen Kevin Pollak's chat show?
Brilliant!
Okay, for those of you who have not seen Kevin Pollak, that is homework before our next salon. It is an absolute must. And what I love most about his chat show is that it's extended play. It's not the bullshit on TV where they come on and they have their little thing that you ask them so that they can promote their latest movie. He sits for 2 hours.
Brilliant.
With Jon Favreau, I was just watching that one, with Mike Binder, with Craig Bierko, with Stephen Collins, with our Stephen Collins, I mean, they're all just amazing. And Kevin's friends with most of those guys, so everybody's really relaxed and at their best, and it's real conversation. Just fantastic. You must check it out. Okay. He's got over 85,000 people watching live. It's streamed live on Sundays at 3, right, Kevin?
Usually, yeah.
At 3. Rock and roll. And over 1 million downloads in a single month. Oh, I want what he's having. It received the 2010 Streamy Award for Best Live Production of a Web Series. Kevin first started performing stand-up comedy at the age of 10. I want to know what venue you were at, that they hired you. Our birthdays are only a day apart. I would like some of what he's got to rub off. Yes, October 30th, Scorpios, yeah.
Wow.
And yes, I am older, so just shut up. But it's just, yeah. Anyway, he became a touring professional stand-up comic at the age of 20. In 1988, shortly after he shot his first HBO special, he landed a role in Willow, directed by Ron Howard and produced by George Lucas. Not a bad place to start. In 1989, he got his first dramatic role, acting in Barry Levinson's Avalon. Remember? Which was fantastic. But it was Kevin's role in Rob Reiner's A Few Good Men that proved his ability to stand out and shine amidst some of the greatest actors in the world. Not too long after, Kevin was co-starring with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon in Grumpy Old Men, and its sequel, Grumpier Old Men. In 1994, Kevin was offered the plum role in a little indie film called The Usual Suspects. Gives me goosebumps again, because when I think of him as an actor, that's what I think of. The film won 2 Academy Awards as well as the Best Ensemble Cast Award for the National Board of Review. That same year, the call came from Martin Scorsese, and Kevin joined Casino. I hope you're going to tell us that story too. I didn't read that one, but I want to hear it. As the 20th century came to a close, Variety named its top 10 hardest working film actors. The criteria was that that said actor had to have done at least 3 films per year, each of the year of the 1990s. Kevin made the list. Wow. You got a lot of money. Kevin will be seen in the holiday film drama Saving Santa, the dark comedy Shez Upshaw, Grace Unplugged, and Max Rose with Jerry Lewis. As a director, Kevin's debut was a comedy web series called Vamped Out, which debuted in 2010. Kevin co-created and co-wrote this series with Jason Antoon, which earned rave reviews such as Curb Your Enthusiasm for the Undead and Arrested Development for the web. Next up, Kevin will direct the feature film Waiting for Helen from his own original screenplay, a contemporary film noir which Kevin will also star in. He's had 2 HBO stand-up comedy specials and was named Comedy Central's one of the top 100 comedians of all time. His 2 live stand-up CDs, A Little Off the Top and What Are the Chances, are available on iTunes. His first book, How I Slept My Way to the Middle, Secrets and Stories from the Stage, Screen, and the Interwebs, is what brings him here today.
What a slacker.
I know, slacker. I chased, begged, and pleaded with Kevin to read for us on Twitter, in person. It's been 2 years. I self-consciously asked him in person at the Monkey Show, and he said yes. I'd be lying if I said that he doesn't intimidate me just a little bit, but pushing through the fear, he's ours, and he's here. Ladies, please welcome the incredibly, brilliantly, versatily talented, wonderful Kevin Pollak.
Please be seated. I just have about 4 minutes left after all of that. Yes, thank you for whipping them into a frenzy. I don't know where to begin with all of that. That was the hardest thing I've ever endured. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you all for having me. Let me start there. It means a lot what you're doing to an outsider who's here for the first time. It's instantly impressive and kind of extraordinary, so good on you. And makes it that much more of an honor to stand before you and share some of my musings. How I slept my way to the middle. For years I've been saying you've heard it's lonely at the top. I'm here to tell you it's fan-fucking-tastic in the middle. I did start out as a stand-up comedian and had dreams of being in movies and had no formal training as an actor. I'm not terribly proud of that. It just happens to be a fact. And A Few Good Men was sort of the crossing the goal line of getting offers instead of having to audition, which is what every actor fantasizes about. So truly, in my 40s, I found nirvana being a character actor and getting offers and having all this respect and regard from my peers as a character actor. Ambition is a young man's game, or woman's, and woman's, and it's a proper emotion if you are to succeed at all in any business, let alone show business. You have to have a competitive edge and whatnot. But I found my place in the sun as a character actor, and I started celebrating how fortunate, it's probably for me, how fortunate, you could change that ringer by the way, how fortunate I was to have this career and get work based on my own work, which is what every actor, actress desires, and how incredibly grateful I was for all that. So instead of pushing back and saying, you know, where's the top, the apex, I realized that I was living it. I can get a seat in any restaurant based on my face. They don't always remember my name, which is fine. But paparazzi doesn't chase me down the street, although TMZ did cover my divorce, fuckers. Clearly a slow news day for them. I can't imagine what else nothing happened that day. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's true, you know. So I realized it was time to celebrate this. My stand-up act always featured impersonations. You'll get several. But I started telling stories about meeting these people. Christopher Walken, Peter Falk. There's a lot of stories in the book about doing the Tonight Show the first time and what an amazing fantasy come true that was for me, and then orchestrating how I did it, which I will read to you. But I did the Peter Falk impression. That was my big one in 1988, I guess, my first Tonight Show. Yeah, 87, 88, somewhere in there. And Johnny had Peter Falk on the show all the time. And I knew he was a ridiculous fan. And I knew that when I did the impression, sitting next to him on the couch, it would have a tremendous impact. I did not realize that after doing him on Peter Falk on Tonight Show, that I would be accosted in the produce section at Ralph's by Peter Falk, who said to me, and I quote, "How do you do that with your arms?" Longer version of that story in the book. But he did say, "Me, I understand, but how do you do that?" So I suppose I'll jump in. You mentioned Tom Cruise. I called in every favor possible. Penn Jillette and Billy Bob Thornton wrote the forwards. So there's two crazy fuckers right there. I called in every favor I had, just giant names to write shit about me in the book. Let's see. I'll read just one of those because he kind of nails it. I said, you know, don't write something favorable and nice because that's boring. And also, it's not a roast, so be creative. So all these sections in the book have this separate gray sort of color, and they all say, start with, but enough about you, ... and then the celebrity's name, in this case Matthew Perry, who writes, when I was first contacted by Kevin Pollak about writing something about him in a book he was writing about himself, my reaction was twofold. Firstly, I thought, finally, there is someone more narcissistic than I am. My second thought was, how can I make this more about me than him? I grew up in Canada. My first loves were hockey and the movie. I am 6 feet tall and have blue eyes. I became wildly famous in 1994. I am kind, honest, and get along beautifully with children. I don't dance often, but when I do dance, I mean it. Kevin Pollak was in A Few Good Men. I weigh 175 pounds. I've recently taken to the gym And as a result, I'm beginning to see some definition of my upper torso. My favorite song is Here Comes the Sun, because I believe it is unapologetically hopeful and upbeat. Kevin Pollak was born in October. Here's a poem I read about myself. Roses are red, violets are blue. Matthew Perry is a Leo who has definition in his upper torso. So, what a dick, right? So I tell a lot of stories about, here's the deal, if you were good to me when I was first starting out, or any time, I champion you in the book. If you were a dick, you're also in the book. For example, everyone now might know that Rip Torn is crazy, party of one, because he tried to hold up a bank in his pajamas at 5 in the morning. That was in the news. We didn't know he was crazy 15 years ago when I worked with him in a movie called Canadian Bacon. Thank you both for seeing it. But every day, usually after lunch, Rip would have some classic paranoid delusion that someone on the cast or crew was out to get him. Yeah, and you never knew when your turn was. I was on Nixon's list. That happened every day. Nobody knew Nixon had a list, but Rip was on it. It got kind of fun, though, when we shot in Toronto, so all the actors, of course, are staying in the same hotel. Character actor Kevin J. O'Connor and his new bride had the hotel room next to Rip's, which they realized, and they started hearing Rip yelling through the wall that was so thin between their two hotel rooms. And they started to hear on a regular basis Rip yelling what they finally deemed was hooker du jour. Yeah, so it went from really scary to creepy to hilarious. That they put together a top 10 list of things they heard Rip Torn yell at the hooker through the wall. I don't remember all of them, but I do remember the number one thing we heard Rip Torn yell at the hooker through the wall. I said, milk it like a cow! Yeah. That's a quote. Now, I dined off that story for 10 years until I ran into Kevin J. O'Connor and I said, I've been telling everyone the story you told me about you and your wife having the hotel room. And I told him the same story I just told you. And I said, have I been exaggerating it? And he said, yeah, no, that's what happened. So, as I said, when you were cool or great or good to me, I championed you in the book. Tom Cruise has taken a lot of shit for his personal beliefs and what have you. So I'll give you a little piece of my experience. You know, you only know what you know from your experience. I talk a lot about If You Could Make, because it really was me being brought up to the majors as a career moment. I'd done a handful of films beforehand, Barry Levinson's Avalon, which is a personal favorite of mine, and certainly my first opportunity to be a dramatic actor and sort of change the course of my career, whether I wanted to change course or not. Yeah, I was a comedian who wanted to be sort of Michael Keaton in Night Shift, I think was the prototype. And then Avalon happened, and I made a quick write, and everyone thought I was a younger Harvey Keitel, which was bizarre. They would ask my then wife, where did he train in New York? And we would laugh. So, careful what you wish for a stand-up comedian to have street cred as a dramatic actor. The moment, though, came when I was called up to stand alongside Tom and Demi and Jack Nicholson and Kevin Bacon and Kiefer Sutherland. And, you know, as a comedian with no formal training, this is as intimidating as it had ever been, really. And I expected when I showed up to rehearsal the first couple of days, and then kept this feeling with me well into shooting, that someone at some point was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, we've made a horror mistake. Yes, we met Kevin Spacey. Could you come with us? But Tom treated me like an equal from minute one, if not second one, which is his job as a professional, to treat everyone the same, but it was ridiculous. how much of an equal I was in his eyes the moment we met. And so much so that it didn't take too long for the comedian in me to sort of feel comfortable to bust Tom's balls about whatever I wanted. He had foolishly made the mistake of making me feel welcome. That just is wrong. So I'll read you this moment in time. Much to my utter surprise and delight, these megastars treat me as an equal from the get-go. There isn't even a nanosecond where there's anything less than they're kind and supportive. And it's almost startling because I expect it to be Tom and Demi and Kevin. I'm not naive enough to think that I wouldn't be allowed to look them in the eye, but I have no idea that they'd welcome me and accept me as an equal. Still, I don't want to make a nuisance of myself or overstep my boundaries, so I'm always conscious about staying cool. Plus, a frequent disquiet lurks in the back of my head. At some point, someone's going to say, "We've made a terrible error." So here I am rehearsing with one of the biggest movie stars of our day, finally getting over my "I don't belong here" nerves, finally comfortable enough to fuck with Tom. Day 3 of rehearsal, Tom's making notes in his script. But when Tom Cruise makes note in his script, it's with a pen that's bigger and way more fantastic than what everyone else is using. It looks like a Mont Blanc on steroids. He's not using this pen to be a dick, and I know that. I know that everyone else knows, so therefore making fun of him would be especially fun. Tom, do they make a bigger pen than that one? Then 20 minutes later, you're certain that's the biggest one they make. He laughs each time, and eventually he gets all super genuine and says, "Kev, check this thing out. Just write with it. It's like nothing you've ever felt, I'm telling you." He hands it over, and I start writing with it. Within 2 seconds, it's like the pen says, "Yeah, I got this." I'm not kissing ass here. It's insane how easy it is to write with this damn pen. It's like angel wings floating on a cloud. I insist to Tom as I hand it back. "Where did you get it?" Now this is 20 years ago, 1992. You know, it turns out when Demi finds out, she becomes obsessed with the pen. She wants to know more about the pen. But you can't just pull out your smartphone in 1992 and Google about this pen. You have to send people out on horseback. They come back with information about the pen on a scroll. It's made by a company in France, available in the US exclusively at Barney's of New York. This is 1991 when we're shooting. Remember, before Barney's of New York opened locations in every major city, including dozens of outlet malls outside of New York. I continued teasing him about the pen being the greatest, most magical pen on the planet, the whole time thinking this really is the greatest, most magical pen. Turns out the pen costs $500, which is a quarter to Tom Cruise, but $500 is the exact amount that tells me I will never own this pen. Therefore, I don't want to look at the pen. I will stop coveting it for the same reason that I don't go window shopping or to strip bars. If I can't have it, meh. A few days after rehearsal ends and we begin to shoot, there's a knock at my trailer door. It's Tom's assistant. He hands me a wrapped gift. I open it up. It's a teak triangle, rectangle-shaped box that houses, you guessed it, the pen. Aww. Yes, $500 is a quarter to Tom. The thoughtfulness behind this gesture, I mean, well, we just started working together, and I'd only known him for a couple of weeks. I had no idea that people really did things like this. Even as a wrap gift, which the biggest stars often give, this is ridiculous. The pen would have been overly generous in any situation, but he knows I love the pen and realizes that I appreciate it for what it is, so he wants me to have it for the rest of the shoot. Later that day, I'm making a note in my script with a ballpoint pen. I feel a tap on my shoulder. "Buddy," says the none too pleased face of Tom Cruise, "where's the pen?" "Oh, Tom. Tom. The pen is amazing. The pen is one of the greatest gifts I'll ever receive, seriously. But it's no longer just a pen. It's now the pen that Tom Cruise gave me." It's no longer a pen I can use. I might lose the pen. Tom, that can never fucking happen. This is the pen I put on my mantle, Tom. People come to my house. There's a pen light that hits it just right. I point to the pen. I tell them a story. It'll be the greatest story about a pen they will ever hear. He nods and laughs and gets it. But even so, he says, I bought you the pen so you could use the pen and enjoy it. Just be careful. Don't lose it. It's a great pen. I know, Tom. But it's the Tom Cruise pen. Please don't make me use the pen. I get it, he said. Just be careful. Don't lose it. Don't lose the pen. We argue the rest of the day. 3 days later, there's a knock at my trailer door.
No.
It's Tom's assistant. He hands me a wrapped gift. Inside a teak triangle rectangle shaped box that housed, you guessed it, another pen. And the assistant says, Tom wants you to use the other pen. I promise you this is not Tom Cruise showing off. It might seem that way, but he's not throwing around $500 pens like pieces of hubba bubba. It's just the best way he knew how to say, I get it. Here's one for the mantle. Now write with the fucking pen. If you come to my house, on my mantle are two teak triangles. You open one of them, there's the second pen Tom gave me. You open the other one, and it's empty. Because that's the pen I use every day.
You signed my book with that pen.
I'll be signing your books with this pen. I've already signed a few with the Tom Cruise pen. It actually levitates. Hold on a second. I'll let you hold the Tom Cruise pen when we take a photo. Please be careful because it's 20 years old.
Yeah. What's the brand?
Well, that's just it. It really was made in Paris, France for Barney's of New York. And in fact, it just says on the pen, Barney's of New York.
Wow.
Yeah. And while free, the refills are $4,000. No, they're not. They're wildly inexpensive, which is fantastic. So I can use the pens the rest of my life. But yeah, there are two of them, as you can see. Yeah. And I'm such an ass. I wanted people to understand how ridiculously huge it was, so I put a quarter for perspective. An idiot. But an absolute idiot. All right, so one of the things that I admire about all of you, and especially Vicki, is this wonderful gathering you have going here is about taking the reins of your life, which is always difficult to do and should be most highly commended. There are very few times in my life where I had an opportunity to truly take the reins, and I will read about one of them. It's called The King and I. Taking the reins of your career, especially if you're trying to wedge your way into show business, can be scary or suicidal. One wrong decision can send you into the toilet, and you'll be forced to sign on for a 6-month residency at Ira Giggles Igloo in Frostbitten Balls, Wisconsin. For horror of horrors, you might have to live by your convictions, and that, my friend, is a lonely place to be. But sometimes, no matter how frightening, you have to seize control of your destiny, because nobody else is going to care about you and your career the way you do. Whether your career is making people laugh or making people wedding cakes, you're the one on the front lines each and every day. You have to have a pretty damn good idea of how the world feels about you and your work. Sure, you might have a wonderful agent, manager, and or sales rep, But you're always going to be your best advocate because you care more about you than anybody else. And you know you better than anybody else. Not to mention that those wonderful agents, managers, and lawyers, oh my, and you just have other clients, and you just have you. Sometimes that means making hard decisions without the benefit of a second pair of eyes, ears, or balls, but on a certain level it's better that you suffer from your mistakes than somebody else's. It's easier to point the finger at somebody else, yeah, but it's healthier to point it at yourself. The spoils go to the victor, but you rarely learn shit from success. So-called failure, on the other hand, is brimming with truly useful lessons. Deep down, I always knew all of this, even though not a single person in my life bothered to mention it. It was yet another hugely important lesson I had to learn on my own, which isn't a bad thing because figuring shit out for yourself makes it more substantial and lasting. When did I learn this lesson? When I finally got my shot to be on The Tonight Show. Performing a stand-up on The Tonight Show has been a dream of mine since childhood. I grew up mentally collecting comedians the way other kids physically collected baseball cards. Back in the late 60s, we had a choice between Bill Cosby, Bob Newhart, Jonathan Winters, may he rest in peace, Alan King, Lenny Bruce, Don Rickles, Henny Youngman, Phyllis Diller, Shelley Berman, and maybe a dozen of others, all of whom, by the time they were in your living room, were polished performers. What mesmerized me the most were their comings and goings on Carson. That was where the magic happened, and I report that fact with 100% certainty because from the age of 10 on, I rarely missed an episode. As I raced into my adolescence, I noticed a trend on the show. The bigger and or better comedians are no longer doing straight stand-up routines. Johnny introduced them, and then they head directly over to the King Carson's throne for a conversation. Guys like Albert Brooks, Rodney Dangerfield, Steve Martin, Don Rickles were couch comedians. They still do their act, but it's in the guise of a conversation from that couch, that prized perch for movie stars from yesterday and today, or the odd 6-year-old who could outsmart Carson. Carson always displays an ability to converse with all ages, but more importantly, he's a great listener. As I watch the evolution of stand-up to sit-down, I figure out that being a couch comedian who appears in the first segment is far more prestigious than being a regular stand-up comedian who does his 6 minutes at the end of the show. A couch comedian. Yeah. I'm 28 years old when the final piece of the puzzle falls into place. The couch comedian is a friend of the king, not just his jester. I'm working regularly alongside with many of the big-name comedians who were appearing on the show. I find out about this thing called spontaneously paneled. Being spontaneously paneled means that once you finish your 6 minutes on standing on the star at the center stage, which you Carsonophiles will be interested to know, lay only 3 feet away from the star, which Carson himself stood and did his monologue, Johnny waves you over to the couch for a quick chat. There's little inserts here. I'm just trying to figure out whether to skip this. This is rare for comics debuting on the show. I think it only happened about a half dozen times for comedians of my generation. When it did happen, it was huge. Roseanne Barr was spontaneously paneled, as was Drew Carey, both of whom killed and both of whom deserved the honor. This wasn't just a luck of the draw event. Carson knew great talent the first time he saw it. He wanted to knight the gifted, and maybe he used it as a tool to add to his legend. I also learned from a first-timer there's a set protocol dictated by Carson's legendary segment producer, talent coordinator, gatekeeper, an internally sourpuss man named Jim McCauley. The stand-up comedy appearance protocol is simple. You aren't allowed to look at Johnny until you finish your routine. Even then, you can look at him only once. If Johnny thinks you did well, he'll shoot you the thumb and index finger OK sign. If you get a smile but no OK sign, you aren't coming back. If you get the wave from him, you get the fuck over to that couch and you sit the fuck down. In other words, don't stand there pointing at yourself saying, "Me? What? You want me? Really?" Go sit the fuck down. When I arrived in town in the fall of 1983, holy shit, that's 30 years. 1 year almost to the day after I took second place in the San Francisco International Stand-Up Comedy Competition, which with $7 will get you a cup of coffee. Officially becoming big in the small pond, there are 2 comedy clubs in LA where Macaulay fishes for new talent, the Comedy Store and the Improv. When he's debating whether to bring new blood onto the show, the comics call it circling, as in, who's Jim circling tonight? Macaulay's presence in a club spikes our competitiveness. We all want to be the one being sought, but we still all support the circled comic. That said, when we're out in the restaurant area of the Improv, there's some extra angling to get on stage for Macaulay. Jim had worked on The Tonight Show forever. Johnny trusts that he'll hire only the best comedians out there. Still, as powerful as Jim has become, he has a palpable concern of his own. It's that at one point, if he books the wrong act, who chokes so badly on screen, Johnny once told him, the next time you bring me a comedian who's not ready, I'll tear your head off and shit down your neck. As legend has it, that's exactly what he said to me. Macaulay has another reason to be careful. When Johnny really takes to an act, he announces on the show, "That was just marvelous. Wow, folks, you'll see him back here real soon." And then turns to Macaulay backstage and says, "I want that kid back on next week." So Macaulay won't invite a comic on until he or she has not 1 but 2 television-ready routines, which is why he's been known to circle for months, if only to cover his own neck. I'm 28, I've been in LA for 3 years, and after a whole lot of working, touring, and honing, I finally feel good about my act. My repertoire of impressions has grown, but certain ones have become staples. Peter Falk, William Shatner. One night, half an hour or so before I'm scheduled to take the stage at the Improv, I'm wandering the halls of the club and there's a tap on my shoulder. "Hey, Kevin," says Jim Macaulay. "Hey, Jim." I knew him from several trips to The Tonight Show, accompanying friends like Paul Reiser, Jerry Seinfeld. I hadn't known that Jim was in the house, though. So I asked, "Who are you here to see tonight?" "You," he deadpans. "But it doesn't compute." "Are you kidding? Nobody told me you were coming to see me." "Well," he says, "I actually came to see somebody else, but I wanted to talk to you." "Is this happening?" I ask out loud. "You're ready, Kevin. You're ready to do the show." When my heart starts again, it almost flies out of my chest. This guy's never given me more than a perfunctory hello, and now he's telling me that he's going to make my childhood dreams come true. He said, "I'm going to watch you carefully tonight and figure out what 6 minutes of your act to use." I nod, take a sip of my beer, then get hit with one of those ballsy ideas from the ozone. To this day, I don't know where the hell I got the nerve to say, "I want to suggest something to you, Jim, and you might think I'm crazy, but hear me out." Okay, he says. I'm listening. "Jim, I've been watching your show since I'm 10 years old, back when there was only a small handful of comedians who could stand on the star, and even fewer who went right to the panel. I know how it works. I know what works on the stage and what works on that couch, and I truly don't think that I'll make as much of an impact from standing on that star as I will from the panel. Johnny does characters and impersonations himself, and I know in my heart that when I sit next to him and do Peter Falk, it'll have a huge impact, considerably more than it would from the stage standing on that star. Nervy? Yes. Ballsy? Absolutely. Insane and career-killing? Most likely. If I told another comic what I did, he'd say, "You did what? You shit on the tap? Who the fuck do you think you are? Get away from me. You're a dick. Fuck you." Jim's not moving a muscle. An odd look comes over his face that suggests this is a first for him. Then he does the most unnerving thing possible. He smiles. This scares the shit out of me. And I panic and say, "I know there's a protocol. I know you can't bring me right to the couch in my first appearance as a comedian on the show. I know how this works, but I'm telling you, I'm so convinced that the chasm between doing it on the star and on the sofa is so wide that I'm willing to wait until I have a TV show or a movie to promote before coming on the show. This way, I'm introduced as a guest rather than a comic. I'll go right to the couch, launch into my impersonations, and I just know that's how I should make my first appearance. Jim stops smiling, starts staring at me, like I'm an alien. I see in his eyes that this isn't playing well. So I backpedal. Listen, I know this is insane. I'll probably call you back in an hour and beg for this opportunity back that you're offering me here and now. I don't want you to leave this conversation thinking, this kid's an idiot. I'll never ask him to the Tonight Show. If that's what's going to happen, watch my act, pick whatever 6 minutes you think are worthy, and I'll consider myself the luckiest guy in the room. Just so you understand, what I'm suggesting isn't from a place of cockiness. Quite the opposite. In fact, it's because I've studied the show my entire life, waiting for this moment. He gawks at the alien before him for a few more painful moments and says, well, I don't guess I can disagree with you. Your impersonations would have a bigger impact from the couch. And you're also correct that I can't ask Mr. Carson to bring you out to the couch until you have a movie or a TV show to promote. Do you have either coming up anytime soon? Not only do I not have a role in an upcoming movie or a television show, I don't have any auditions lined up for a movie or a television show. Not only do I not have any auditions lined up for a movie or a television show, I don't have an agent who could send me out for auditions. Not only do I not have an acting agent, I don't even have any prospects for an acting agent. I have nothing. So I say to him, not just yet. He almost laughs, probably because he figures out what I'm actually saying. Of course, this is Macaulay, so laughing is out of the question. Okay, he says, if you're willing to wait, great. Let's see how long you're willing to wait. You've got what it takes now. I can't imagine you're going to get worse. You're only going to get better. The time we're waiting will be good for you and the show. So, let's stay in touch. I'm elevated for a moment, at which point elation gives way to nausea. Now I'm terrified that I made the biggest mistake of my life. What if he was just acting supportive, but really thought I was a whack job? Deep down, he might have been relieved that I showed my true colors early on. But that's just natural paranoia and insecurity. Healthy stuff, right? Over the next year, while I'm working clubs all up and down the West Coast and a few across the country, I managed to land an agent. After the show, let's see, backstage, I get signed by this agent. So Merv Griffin sidetrack. Okay, so here it is. I finally get an agent. I go on an audition after audition after audition, easily over 100 auditions. If you're doing the math, that's one every 3 days. That's a lot of fucking auditions. Finally, I'm cast in a fantasy adventure movie called Willow, to be directed by some small timer named Ron Howard and produced by an even smaller timer by the name of George Lucas. I call Macaulay, Jim Macaulay. He pencils me in for the week the movie is released. I'm ready. December 12th, 1987. Johnny does his monologue, kibitses with Ed, speaks with his first guest. After commercial break, it's time. Doc Severinsen cuts off his orchestra at the perfect moment, and then Johnny says, in that unmistakable Iowa, Nebraska accent, ladies and gentlemen, making his first appearance on the show, a young comedian who's in a movie. Directed by Ron Howard, called Willow. Please welcome Kevin Pollak. The audience lets out a collective cry of, who the hell is Kevin Pollak? I walk out from behind the curtain, a move I'd rehearsed 5,000 times in my bedroom mirror. I wave to the audience, also rehearsed, unbutton my jacket as I'm walking to Johnny, rehearsed. As I stepped onto that hollow ground, I chose not to point at Doc on my way over to Johnny, as all my heroes have done, because this is my first time and I don't know Doc. So who the fuck am I to point like I belong here? I'm not nervous, but rather as excited as a kid making his first trip to Disneyland. Or a kid trying to fall asleep on Christmas Eve. Or a guy who's about to lose his virginity. I can't believe this is actually happening. Johnny, the king, stands at his throne. Unlike Jay Leno, who dances out from behind the desk.
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you.
Or David Letterman, who stoically greets his guests halfway with a handshake. Johnny waited for you to join him at his court. I pass in front of the king and sit down. After a bit of introduction, banter, he says, "Now I understand you do impressions. You do one of my favorite actors who's been on the show many, many times, Peter Falk, is that right?" It's customary to paint a picture for the crowd so they know whom you're about to impersonate. In this case, in case you're not as good as you think you are. Me, I launch right into it after 2 sentences. Johnny completely loses his shit. No fooling. It was just as I had dreamed when I suggested to Macaulay that we wait for this opportunity. The audience, who always takes their cue from the king, follows suit. If Johnny thinks it's funny, then it's funny. And after only 32 seconds, I'm a made man. Afterwards, my friends compliment the appearance by saying, "Boy, Johnny really likes you." Not, "Hey, that bit killed," or "Man, the crowd loved the Shatner." It was all about Johnny's affirmation. Although he could be more gracious than any talk show host before or since, he suffered no fools. So if he really likes you, it's as apparent as Ed's love of booze for lunch. After that appearance, Johnny has me on the show at least 3 times a year until he retires.
Wow.
He and I developed a closeness. That, professionally speaking, I cherish above all others. It was everything I'd wanted. It happened strictly because I took the reins. Had I taken the advice of another comic, a family member, or the agent I didn't have yet, I would have gone on the show when Macaulay asked me to, and been lumped with the other comedians who got that shot. Not that that would have been a bad thing, but this was far, far better for me. It was the boldest, nerviest, ballsiest decision of my career, and it taught me that if you ever have the opportunity to control your own destiny, when the stakes are at their highest, you better fucking do it. And then I tell the story about how Peter Falk stopped me in the grocery store. Yeah. It really was magical. I include a picture of me on the Tonight Show with Carson. In the photo, I'm teaching him how to do William Shatner.
Oh, God.
And
Teach us.
the caption, I will. The caption says, "Teaching Carson how to do Shatner." As always, he got it down immediately. I actually wrote this book strictly so I could show off this photo. So there's always a trick. First of all, doing impersonations is a trick. If I can recreate someone you love, then I will steal the affection you have for the actual person. If I think you like Peter Falk and I say, "Excuse me, I hate to bother you," then all the love you actually have for Peter Falk is mine. There's a lot of stories about meeting these people in the book. Shatner was one of the more surreal ones. I've been mocking him for maybe 30 years. And the plan was not to meet him. The plan was just to mock him. And in fact, never meet him. So he asked me to come to his office to participate in a book he was writing about Trekkies called Get a Life. Yeah. And he wanted me to, in one chapter of his book, explain step by step, beat by beat, how to do Captain Kirk. Or as he put it, the consummate Captain Kirk. So, yeah, it was as surreal as you would think. But I asked him, why do you want me to do this? I mean, it's an honor, and of course, yes. But why? He said, I'm sick and tired of people coming up to me and doing horrible impressions. So the hope is that,
you'll teach them how. And I'll stop being forced to laugh and smile at shitty Captain Kurtz. Yeah. There's a much longer version in the book, because he really sort of was a surrogate father at some point. And he actually wrote a really funny, one of those little excerpt things. So you asked for the Albert Brooks, which I too am a lifelong fan of. So here we go. Well before CNN, Larry King had an overnight syndicated radio show on Mutual Radio that ran 5 nights a week from midnight to 3 a.m. Larry was a great broadcaster even back then, and I was in the habit of listening to him on the way home from gigs. So it was a thrill when one night a friend named Rich Lieberman tells me, "I've got the hotline number to Larry's show. You should call in and do your Albert Brooks." Albert was one of Larry's regular call-in guests, and Rich knew that I had developed a pretty strong Brooks impression. I was obsessed with the comedic mind of Albert Brooks, and I can still recite Modern Romance practically from beginning to end. So I tell Rich, "Oh man, that'd be amazing." Minutes later, he makes the call. Larry picks up and I hear that voice. "We go to San Francisco, hello." And in my best Albert Brooks, I say, "Larry? Larry, it's Albert. How are you? How are you doing, buddy? Listen, I'm calling from San Francisco because I'm visiting a girl here. It's not important. What is important is that I'm listening to the show and I wanted to see how you're doing. We haven't talked in a while." Larry says, "Let me go on record as saying that while I do not believe this is Albert Brooks, that's the best Albert Brooks impression I've ever heard. Who is this?" "I'm sorry, Larry," I say, breaking character. "My friend put me up to this. My name is Kevin Pollak. I'm a stand-up comedian here in San Francisco. I listen to your show every night, so I know that Albert calls in. And listen to me, Kevin Pollak, you are going to be a star. Do you do other impressions?" I give him some Columbo, some Carson. "You're a great talent, young man. I look forward to seeing much more of you in the very near future." That's Kevin Pollak, ladies and gentlemen. Look for him, a rising young comedian. We'll be back after these messages. And then as he went to commercial, I could hear him faintly say, "Wow." And I just remember that sticking with me. Wow. Yeah, he wasn't just sort of performing for his audience. He actually had a moment like looking to one of his producers. So let's see here. The King ignited me. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to lean way into this new opportunity. Not after too long, Larry had me on a show in Washington, D.C. He tells his audience of our first conversation, demands that I do my Brooks, then asks me to explain to his listeners how I honed the impression. For a long time, I tell him, the outgoing message on my answering machine was me doing an Albert Brooks impression. When it still needed work, my friends would leave a message saying, "Hey, Kevin, it's Steve. That's a terrible Albert Brooks. Call me back." That way I know that it needed work. Eventually, I got a message along the lines of, "Hi, Kevin, it's Rick. Don't forget we're playing poker Thursday night. That's a great Albert Brooks." I was hoping you'd get better at doing him. Then I knew that I was ready. One day, I'm at home writing, and the phone rings. I let the machine get it, and I hear, "Hi, Kevin, you don't know me, but this is Rob Reiner." I freeze where I'm standing. Rob continues, "I grew up with Albert Brooks. He's one of my best friends." That's an unbelievable impression of him. What's really amazing is that that's not how he sounds. That's not just how he sounds while he's performing on stage or acting in a movie. That's how he sounds around the house. He laughs and says, "Just wanted to tell you that. Okay, bye." This call sends me dancing around my little apartment in sheer jubilation for only about 45 seconds. That is how long it takes me to realize that not only do I not know Rob Reiner, I haven't met any filmmakers. And I thought, I just had a chance to talk to Rob Reiner, and I didn't. Why would I not talk to him? Why would I not allow him to compliment the hell out of me and ask me more questions? Then maybe he'd come and see me perform somewhere. He'd audition me for a film. Idiot! Oh, but there's more. Over the next 90 minutes, my phone rings maybe 20 times. Back then, there was no caller ID, so you had to screen your calls. Each time after the outgoing message played, the caller would hang up. Finally, somebody said something. "Hi, this is Carl Reiner." Well, don't you know by now I'm ready to talk to a Reiner. I dive at my phone and say hello to Rob's brilliant father. Carl says, "Hi, Kevin, listen. I heard about your Albert Brooks impression from my business partner, George Shapiro. George is Jerry Seinfeld's manager. Jerry told us about your outgoing message, so I had to call. This is not the first time I've called, by the way." I don't know if you know this, but the impression of yours is all over. I told him your son left a message. He said, "Yes, I'm the one that told Rob to call." Also, so you know, Rob called Albert. And then Albert called you. Didn't leave a message, but called Rob right back and said, "Really, Rob?" That's what you think I sound like? Sounds like my Uncle Zeke. After I finish telling Larry and his listeners the story, Albert Brooks calls into the show. "Hi, Larry. It's Albert. I'm in the car. What the hell is going on?" "Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen," Larry says, "you've been listening to Kevin Pollak doing Albert Brooks. We've been talking about our great mutual love and appreciation for Albert, and now we've got the real Albert on the phone. Albert, what do you think? The kid does you pretty good, huh?" "Listen, Larry, let me tell you this. When I first heard Kevin do the impression on the show, I called my attorney. He has an 800 number, and I asked him..." "if there was anything legally inappropriate about this." He said there wasn't, and I said, "Well, then it's a good thing." "What do you think of Kevin's story about you on his answering machine?" Larry asked. "Yes, I did call your machine, Kevin. That story is true, but the impression sounds much better now. What kind of answering machine was that?" There I am listening to my hero riff on the radio, dying with excitement, laughing uncontrollably at his improvisation. What kind of machine was that? "I had a problem earlier, Larry," Albert goes on. "I was listening to the show. Kevin's telling the story. A cop pulls me over. I told him, 'They're doing me on the radio, officer.' So he started listening to the show. He hears Kevin. He hears me. He gave me 2 tickets. Fast forward, I'm crawling into bed early one night when I get a call from a friend named Jimmy Miller, Dennis's brother. Jimmy is now one of the most powerful managers in show business, representing Will Ferrell, Judd Apatow, among others. Back when I was hanging out with him, he was booking the Comedy and Magic Club in Hermosa Beach. "Albert just walked into the Improv," Jimmy said. "Get down here. He too knows of my devotion to Master Brooks." Oh wait, it's not a side thing. In fact, do me a favor, do yourself a favor. Take a 20-minute break from reading this book. Go directly to YouTube and spend some time with the young Albert Brooks to see why this man's skills helped shape what funny was for a generation. His birth name, by the way, Albert Einstein. I'm just saying. I live about 8 blocks from the famed club on Melrose, known as the Melrose Improv, then the Hollywood Improv now, so I'm there immediately. Off in one corner of the club, there's Albert, kibitzing with the Improv's owner, Bud Friedman, along with others, all of whom are sitting at Bud's table. Few comedians dare to sit at Bud's table because, well, it was Bud's table. Somebody of Albert's stature was more than welcome to hold court. Albert, in the middle of telling everybody at the full table a story about his father, glances at me and senses how desperate I am to sit at the table. Thing is, there are no empty seats, but he knows this. And as he's telling the story, I don't know if you guys realize it or knew this, but my father was a radio comic. His name was Parker Carcass. And then without looking up, Albert says, "Kevin, why don't you grab a seat?" So anyways, my dad was a radio comic back in the 30s named Park Your Carcass, and he still hasn't looked my way. Kevin, seriously, you're making me nervous. Sit down. So my father is buried in one of these celebrity cemeteries. Kevin, really, sit. And next to my dad's grave headstone is Shemp Howard from the Three Stooges. And I have this recurring nightmare. Seriously, Kevin, pick a chair. I have this nightmare that I'm at my father's grave and I'm paying my respects very sincerely and somberly, and I look over and there's Mo Howard, and he's kneeling at Shemp's grave and he's stabbing the dirt with 2 fingers, saying, "You bastard, I can't get work as a singer." While everybody laughs hysterically, Albert looks at me and smiles and says, "So, you gonna sit?" A bit later, Albert takes the stage. I've never seen anybody of that stature perform at the Improv, for that matter. I've never seen a true hero perform in such a small venue. More importantly, I've never seen anybody do what he does in that moment, which is to completely improvise a 45-minute stand-up act. The subject matter that night is very near and dear to him. Why Sean Connery is going to win the Oscar and he's not. This is 1987, and Albert and Sean are both up for Best Supporting Actor. Albert for Broadcast News, Sean for The Untouchables. It's a stand-up comedy clinic, at once personal and stream of consciousness. The great stand-up set, easily the greatest stand-up set I would ever see, bar none. After his set, he walks past me as I sat at a table with others. We were all still applauding, and says to me as he passes by, "How nice. You found a seat." I laughed from my comfy chair. That was a stand-up comedy clinic, truly, to which he replies, "Thanks. Would mean so much more if you were standing now. How ironic." So there are all kinds of stories near and dear and true. You mentioned your mom. Everyone's mom is truly insane. My mom's leader of the pack. I mentioned her so often in the book that the editor said, you know, you should really include her in her own sort of way. So much like those grave boxes with the celebrities, there's also grave boxes of my mom all throughout the book, commenting on various stories. Yeah. So, anyways, just thought I'd share that. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone.
Would you can't not do Christopher Walken.
Oh yes, of course. I'm sorry, I forgot.
We can't live without that.
All right, so here's the thing. Like I said, doing impressions is a trick. You know, finding out someone you love, I can steal your affection. But there's also a little key that opens up the lock for every impression. I started out in San Francisco at the same time as Dana Carvey. He and I both did characters and impressions, and everyone always told us we would both be great for Saturday Night Live. He got the show, I got Avalon, and our careers did this. But one night on the phone, we would talk pretty regularly when he was on the show, and it was like a Tuesday. He had a show that Saturday. He said, I'm doing Ross Perot this Saturday. No one had ever thought about doing Ross Perot at that point. I said, how are you going to do Ross Perot? He said, I don't know. They gave me a tape of him on Larry King. And throughout the course of that phone conversation, we both start sort of improvising what a Ross Perot might sound like. And by the end of the call, we both have a great Ross Perot impression. I said, I realized it then, and it's certainly true. I said, this is terrible. Because Saturday, you're going to become famous for doing Ross Perot. And if I do one in my act, they're going to say, you're ripping off Dana Carvey. So Dana was always brilliant at finding that little key to open up an impression, which is why I mentioned him. For me, in the case of Ross Perot, it was his ridiculous analogies. I don't know if you remember, but his analogies always.
Yes.
The economy is like peanut butter, see? If you feed it to a horse and he chews on it, it'll look like he's talking. Still relevant, and thankfully he's not. So, I will teach you now, before the Christopher Walken, I will teach you how to do Jason Statham, the British action hero. Because when I was out with the book at Christmas time doing all the talk shows, Today's Show, Ellen, Fallon, Ferguson, Conan, all the one names, I started doing Jason Statham. And the problem with doing these impressions on TV is this is how these people find out about it and potentially hurt you. So I was afraid that I might get that phone call at 4 o'clock morning. Do you know who I am? Do you fucking know who I am? What did I tell you, mate? I'm the blood to rip out your little fucking heart. Do you know what I mean? Do you fucking know it? So, I'll teach you to entertain your friends at parties. The key to doing Jason Statham, he says 6 words in a row faster than any human being on the planet. Those 6 words are, do you know what I mean? Which he says as, do you know what I mean? I'll put you in that chair, you'll be dead in 30 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Actually, I don't. I got the chair part, but you lost me at the end. You talked too fast. So, your friend and mine, Jay Moore, was the first guy, and I give him credit in the book, I saw do Christopher Walken on TV. He even gives credit to somebody else. And I mentioned Cable, Roger Cable, I think the guy's comic's name was, the first person that Jay saw. Nobody owns an impression, and Dana and I will tell you that we learned our Carson from Rich Little, who was always the greatest technician. Wouldn't know funny if you hit him in the face with a shovel. But yeah. There's stories, big stories about him in the book too. I actually went to his show when I was 17, dressed as Peter Falk. One of the other crazy take the reins moments. And walked up to a stage in the middle of his act, said, "Excuse me, shut up." I'll save that for those of you who choose to read it. So Christopher Walken, Jay, I give him credit for sort of teaching me, along with the Academy Award-winning writer, The Usual Suspects, Christopher McQuarrie. We were both working on a project together, and we were in a casting process. So it was at Warner Brothers a lot, and we ran into Jay just randomly on the lot. And so Chris and I were both working on a Walken impression, and we cornered Jay and said, "What's the fucking secret, man? Because there's always some little thing." And for Jay, he said, every single syllable word, when doing Walken, becomes a 2-syllable word. So the word no becomes now. So, my problem with Christopher Walken is, after doing impersonations for over 30 years, he's the first one that once I start doing him, I can't really stop. Yeah, funny for you. I mean, I'll literally walk around my house speaking only as Christopher Walken for hours, not knowing that I'm doing it until the cat passes out from fear. Give you a little context. We have a little black and white cat. Her name is Edie, and I'll start my day the way anyone else does. I'll open the refrigerator in the morning, and then it just happens. Oh my! We're out of soy milk. This is tragic news. For the lactose intolerant. I wasn't planning a trip to the market today. But clearly a drive to Trader Joe's is in my future. Oh, I hope he's there. Just once. So that I might say, "Hi, Joe. I can't believe you're here. I come to your store all the time. I'm a big fan, Joe. I just never thought I'd see you. I assumed you'd be out. Trading." I do. I love your store, Joe. I love how you move shit around. It's great. Finding cotton and milk is like an Easter egg. There's the Swiss cheese. So I can literally ramble as him for hours.
Alan leaving a message.
So, as she mentioned, I now do a comedy podcast called Talkin' Walkin'. It's on iTunes, or you just go to talkinwalkin.com. I changed the spelling of walking to IN to match the IN of talking. Also, so his family can't sue me. He loves it, and there's a story in the book about meeting him. That's pretty fun. But so yeah, go to iTunes and subscribe if you would, if you like it. It's me rambling as Christopher Walken for an hour, as she said, but it's more my dinner with Andre, only inexplicably Andre is speaking only as Christopher Walken. Because I have a friend come over each time, we sit in the dining room, it's a different friend each time, and we just shoot the shit about minutiae of life and nothing. But again, inexplicably, I'm speaking only as Christopher Walken. We don't reference Christopher Walken. We don't reference me. I asked my friend, don't say my name or his. It's just two people talking, and bizarrely, one of them is Christopher Walken. I encourage you to listen if you're a fan of his. So Alan Arkin was one of my absolute heroes growing up, acting-wise. You know, I was fortunate enough to work with Matthew and Lemon. I talk about them at great length in the book, because they were true character actors who got to be movie stars, which rarely happens. They had perfect careers. They got to do the silliest comedy and the most intense drama in the same career, and it doesn't happen at all. And Alan Arkin was one of those two. He and Peter Falk and The In-Laws was my favorite comedy yeah. Of course, now I do both of them. So when I met Alan Arkin on the set of a movie we did, Indian Summer, you mentioned Mike Binder. He wrote and directed Indian Summer. Although in the litany of 170 two-hour interviews I've now done on the chat show you mentioned, with 7 Academy Award winners and a bunch of great people, I was shocked that Mike Binder made your list. But anyways,
he was supposed to do The Living Room, but he got that movie that you guys were talking about in that show.
Yeah,
and
no,
I
love him. I love him. I just love to bust his chops. So meeting Alan Arkin on the set of that movie was a thrill beyond belief. But I would follow him around every day like a little dog, just anything to be near him, you know. And one day I clearly crossed the line because he turned on me and said, "You know what? Get away from me. It's not funny and it's not cute. You're a strange little man. What the hell is the matter with you? I'm going to take a piss. I'd like to do it alone." Now somebody told me you do me. Is that right? I said to him, "I can't do you." "Really? That's what you think I sound like?" That's not funny. So it's true, a few months after we finished shooting the movie, I called him at home and got his voice answering machine and left this message on his machine. Message to myself. Let's see, I know there was something. What the hell? Oh yes. Yes. Check on the truck for Tony and get some dog food for Jesse. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. 2 days later, I got this message on my machine. "Hi, Kevin, it's Alan. You know what? That's not fun." No, I mean, it really wasn't fun. Because there was about 9 minutes there. I did not remember leaving that message. So,
Has anybody ever gotten pissed?
No, and not yet. I mean, my second HBO special was called Stop with the Kicking, because there was an action hero at the time named Jeff Speakman, which sounded like a Jewish name. Jeff Speakman! So I did an impression of him where he would, because no one saw the movie he was in, so I said, you you should see the movie. It's great. He gets attacked, and he says, "Stop with the kicking." So I was late into my seat at a movie premiere in Westwood one night, running up the steps to the seat, and the lights were coming down. And as I'm looking, the light now is just on the stairwell coming from the chairs. I see 2 feet and then legs, and then a person suddenly standing in front of me, and I stop. And this giant figure reaches down and says, "I'm Jeff Speakman." This is after the special was airing. And I shit myself and then said, "Hi, Jeff." And he said, "I dig your stuff." "Thanks, man. It's an honor. Honor to be in your special," or something. Bullshit like that. Anyways. Did anyone else?
I'm gonna ask you to do one more thing for us, and then we have to sell books. You have to sell books.
Okay.
So would you do your 2 Shatners? Would you do your?
I'm not sure I know what you're referring to. You mean the older Shatner and the younger Shatner?
No, in this podcast, it's the one from Star Trek, and then is it it's the Priceline one? I think,
yeah. So the younger and the older.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the deal. The reason I've been making fun of William Shatner for 30 years is because even as a kid watching Star Trek, I would say to my friends at 7 or 8 years old, "Hey, you guys, the actor playing Captain Kirk is crazy, right?" Because the way he came into the room. Bones, Scotty. What was that move, by the way? And they shot that show for 3 years. You'd think one director would have said, "Cut! Whoa, Bill, what's happening? You all right? What is that? What are you doing?"
He did the same thing on Rescue 911.
Oh, yeah, for years. And now, in April, I don't know the date if it's happened yet, he turns 84.
Wow. He's doing a one-man show.
I've seen it on Broadway. I mentioned in the book, it's how I had my Broadway debut. He brought me on stage.
Oh,
yeah.
my God.
So he's 84, and every time I mention that, no one can believe it. Your response is the one that happens every single time. And I think it happens because he's never been more relevant, he's never been more hilarious and hip, and it's just, I mean, granted, he's blown up like a poisoned dog, but still.
It's private practice. It's the other one is private practice. That's what your second one is.
Boston Legal.
Boston Legal. Yes.
Denny Crane. Nice ass. Denny Crane. I got mad cow. So he really loves the impression. There's a lot of stories about him in the book. But I will sell books, I promise. But if there's any questions anyone else had, I just thought I would. Yes?
Who imitates you?
You know, it's funny, being a voice guy, doing other people, I was blown away the first time this happened. And it's now probably happened randomly, maybe a half dozen times, where I'll be in line at a grocery store, and someone will turn around in front of me as I'm talking. They'll turn around and say, I thought it was you when I heard your voice. That really blew me away, that just my voice, my speaking voice is recognizable. And I would go in for commercial auditions, voiceover auditions, and have some great character in mind. And they said, no, just do your voice. And I thought, are you insane? You're never going to hire me for doing my voice. And of course they haven't, but still. So yeah, that's the closest I've come to someone just recognizing me from my own voice.
Can you easily pick up somebody you've just met, such as Vicki?
No, I mean, I do have a little bit of a Zelig problem. If you remember the Woody Allen movie, I will. It drives my better half crazy when I'm around someone and I do pick up their accent or their voice. It's annoying to everyone but me. I don't know what's happening. I mean, it just really does happen.
Can you talk about the evolution of the Kevin Pollak chat show?
Sure. So yeah, just briefly, I've always been fascinated by people's journeys. One of the reasons I wrote the book, other than it being somebody else's idea to do it, was to share mine. You know, but 4 years ago, March was our 4-year anniversary, I walked into someone's studio space at this internet company, and I said, what is this? It was a little tiny space, much smaller than this room, and he said, one of our staff here shoots a This Week in YouTube type show. And I said, without thinking this sentence ever before, I said, I think I want to do a Charlie Rose but fun from here. And unfortunately, he said, how soon can you start? And my life was over. Because I booked the show myself. I refuse to deal with agents, managers, or publicists. If there's any of those here, I'm sorry. The reason I booked the show myself is so that I'm organically fascinated by the person who shows up, and it's never a booking agent who's a booking, producer who says you've got to read this person's book and listen to their story. And people are on, and by the way, I went through my own Rolodex and about 40 guests, and we've done 170 now. So it really is friends and friends of friends of friends, and I had Mickey Dolenz on, and that was a thing. I've now booked probably 40 guests or more on Twitter, where people will yell at the person using their @name on Twitter, saying, why haven't you been on @Kevin Pollak's chat show? And if that person replies, oh, I'd love to, then I go after them. And through that way, we've literally booked 40 or 50 probably guests.
Very cool.
Yeah, and so, because it's on the internet, there's no censorship, no time restraints. I average about 2 hours with every guest. John Landis holds the record at 2 hours and 52 minutes.
Wow.
He's a talker. But it's Eddie Izzard for 2.5 hours. It's Christopher Guest for 2.5 hours. Someone who doesn't talk.
No, he doesn't.
No. But it's also Harry Shearer and Michael McKean. I got the whole Spinal Tap individually. And also, it's like you mentioned, I know most of these people. So there is a relaxed. There's no audience. It's a very small space. I ripped off Charlie's Round Table with the black backdrop. And we do our own research. Right? I've done every talk show on the planet now, all of them, including Charlie Rose. And Charlie and Bob Costas was one of the few that did their own research. And there was no pre-interview.
But you are so spectacular at it. I was telling you before this began that you have the Carson ability to make whoever you're talking to blossom and shine.
Well, he was the best. He was the best, and it came down to listening. The comedians, and the reason I stopped doing Leno years ago is in the middle of a conversation, he would just interrupt constantly to try to get the joke. And, that's not why I watch those shows. The host needs to be entertaining. You need to tune in night after night because you love the host, but you're also interested in what the guest has to say. And it wasn't just about listening. I'll give you one more example about why Johnny Carson was the best I'll ever be. So, I get to do the couch every time. I never did stand-up on the show. Was on the show maybe a couple dozen times. So here's why he's the best that ever was. He would introduce you. You'd come out from his left, wave to Doc eventually. He'd stay at the throne, and you would pass in front of him before sitting down to his right. And when you pass in front of him, you were allowed to lean over the desk and shake his hand, and he would put his hand out. And in that nanosecond, before you sat down, you would have your back to the audience, just passing in front. And after I did the Peter Falk impression the first time on, and he literally pushed himself away from the desk, he was laughing so hard. The next time on, Jim McCauley, the gatekeeper, asked me to teach Johnny how to do the one eye moving, which is clearly a trick that I learned from watching Anne Bancroft in Mel Brooks's movie. There's a close-up of her, and I think silent movie where she just does this. So I taught Johnny how to do it on the show just like that.
Wow.
He did it perfectly the first time. So the brilliance of why Johnny would be the best there ever was. Every time after that experience of teaching him how to do Peter Falk, every time, like another 20-something appearances, as I walked in front of him, in that nanosecond where I leaned across to shake his hand, in arguably the most nerve-wracking experience of the year, he leaned across and said, "Hi, how you doing? Nice to meet you." But the genius of that is, not just to make me laugh and not just to make you laugh now, he made me feel welcome in his house by saying, "We have an inside joke, sit down." That's why he's the greatest that will ever be. And I guarantee you he had something like that for any guest that he'd like to come on the show. There was nothing rare about that. I could tell that this was something he did if he liked you. So yeah, I learned from him how to listen. And Tom Snyder too. Yeah.
What tipped the scales to you coming here?
Tipped the scales? She cornered me. Can't say no to somebody's face. I could avoid her like hell in an email.
Albert Brooks did.
Yeah.
He didn't say no to me, but he still hasn't been here. But.
Yeah, and I've known Albert now a very long time, and don't take it personally, because when he had his book out, 2030,
Yeah.
he did Adam Carolla's podcast. And when you're in the podcast world, speaking of which, Andy Warhol was very close when he said everyone would be famous for 15
Yes.
minutes. The truth is, everyone will have their own podcast for 15 weeks. So when anyone like that, a big get, does someone's podcast, the rest of us are very envious. So I was giving Albert some shit about it on Twitter, about doing Adam Carolla's show, and why he hadn't done mine. And he direct messengered me on Twitter and said, all right, what's your number? I'm going to call you. And we hadn't spoken on the phone ever. So he called and said, listen, Kevin, I like you. You're one of the good guys. I don't know what this podcasting world is. I don't even know what a Nerdist is. It's just one of the biggest podcasts. My publisher said Adam Carolla launched 3 books, so I did his show. I like you, all right? Maybe I'll do your show. I don't know. I'm so talked out right now, it's ridiculous. The truth is, contrary to belief, I'm not that interested in me. I mean, there's stories to tell, and everybody likes them, and that's great, and I love you, and that you're interested, but please don't make me go on your show for 2 hours. I can't talk for 2 hours. I saw Rob on the show. He was great. I can't do it. And he was so sweet and genuine. It was not someone making excuses that I said, you're off the hook. You never have to do it. No, I probably will someday, but I can't. So I wouldn't take it too personally. He's absurdly shy, and there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.